Mitt Romney's 47% problem and what lies ahead for the Columbus City Schools after Gene Harris.
From the Battelle studio at WOSU at COSI, this is Columbus on the Record. Joining Mike Thompson this week, Laura Bischoff, State House reporter for the Dayton Daily News, Bill Cohen, State House correspondent for Ohio Public Radio, Dale Butland, Innovation Ohio, and Terry Casey, Republican strategist.
Mitt Romney continues to stand by the meaning of his remarks caught on tape at a Florida fundraiser. He wants a nation less reliant on government, fewer people reliant on entitlement programs. But on that now not-so-secret videotape, he claimed that 47% of the country feels entitled to government help and won't take personal responsibility. Terry Casey, we have seen the tape over and over again. We're not going to play it again here, but how badly does this hurt the Republican candidate for president?
Well, there was a program at Ohio State this week with Jim Carvell and Karl Rove, and I think both of them indicated whether it's the problems Obama's got in the Middle East, whether it's this. We got the debates, and I think the debates in early October are going to be the big launching point. And obviously the other thing is in Ohio, we've got the presidential candidates all over the state. So I think right now it's something the media loves to cover, little video snippets. I think they ought to focus more on the issues of why don't we have more jobs in America? What about the international? What about the economy?
But doesn't it play into this narrative that he's out of touch? He's only in favor of the rich, only wants to help the rich, and the narrative has been pretty steady since early summer.
Well, that's been the attack points from Obama. That's what they've been doing. You notice all during the summer
but for this attack point, all they had to do was push play.
Well, you push play, but one of the problems we've got in today's media age, you don't have the question that was asked in the context it was asked. People play one little video part, just like on Obama on redistributing the wealth. You can play little video snippets. That isn't always the context of the full thing discussed.
Due respect, there is a huge difference between the tape of Romney, which is very clear. This is a window into the guy's soul. What he thinks about half the country when he thought only his rich friends were listening, people who could afford to pay $50,000 a plate at a fundraiser in Boca Raton. I've got the quote here. I got the full quote here. There's no question what he was trying to get at. And it's ironic that the same guy who is always criticizing Obama for waging class warfare Romney has himself divided the country into makers and takers. And to hear him tell it, the folks, the working poor who have jobs, because remember, 60% of these people have pay payroll taxes, meaning they have jobs, but they don't earn enough to pay taxes. Then you got the elderly on Social Security. Then you've got the very, very poor that are earning under $20,000 a year. And what's his plan? He thinks they're not paying enough taxes. He wants to raise taxes on them at the same time that we're cutting taxes on millionaires and billionaires. What a wonderfully Republican idea.
But in terms of the clips themselves, both of them, I think they both represent the thrust of what the two parties stand for. The Republican one does show Republicans think people are too dependent on government programs, too dependent, and the Democrats with Obama, I think that shows
this is the clip
what
from
they say.
Talking about redistribution.
Redistribution. There's too much of a gap between the rich and the poor, and some money should be taken from the rich and boost the poor. I think both are accurate
but Bill,
in terms of what they believe.
But Bill, with due respect, the Washington Post just looked at that Obama clip on the redistribution. They gave it 4 Pinocchios. And they said because it's been cut and it's been edited. When you look at the entire tape, it's clear that Obama was talking about decentralizing government, talking about innovation. He was talking about ways to make government more efficient and to make sure everybody gets a fair shot. That's very different from what Romney was talking about.
Laura, based on the makeup of the Ohio electorate, this gaffe, if you want to call it that, seems to resonate very much here because we have a lot of folks who are, working class, elderly. I mean, a lot of states, but Ohio more than others. It seems like this would resonate more. This controversy resonates more.
Sure. I mean, we have 2 million people on Ohio Medicaid. Basically it's a health care program for the poor, and so it does resonate with people. I think that Terry's right to some degree in that it's a small clip. I also think that Dale's right to some point in that it is a window into what he's really talking about when his guard is down.
And one of the problems is the question actually asked by somebody is, why don't you talk more about how you're going to grow the economy? And part of what he was trying to explain to a lot of people, tax cuts don't mean anything because actually, factually, 47% are not paying federal income taxes, though an awful lot of those 47% are paying payroll taxes, sales taxes, local taxes. So there's a lot of context to it. But part of it, we got to get back to talking about how we're going to grow the economy, Dale, so we're not like Greece and Spain and the European countries.
One way we could get back to the topic of the issues would be if Mitt Romney were to say, you know what, I screwed up. And remember during the Jeremiah Wright controversy, when that was really boiling, Obama got up, he stood up in front of everyone and basically tried to explain his race, how he felt about race relations. And a lot of people think that was the moment that he won the nomination or moved towards the nomination when he connected with white voters. Why doesn't Mitt Romney explain his wealth in a similar speech?
Well, if I was running the Romney campaign, I'd probably do some things differently, just like Obama and Hillary had some problems in their campaign. Every campaign has problems, and different people in different parts of the country would say, you ought to do this and ought to do that. The good news for Romney is basically we've got a dead even race based on the polling as of today from Gallup. And the debates, we got a lot of time to go.
Other polls show at 5 to 7 points.
Well, but some of those are samples that are 12% more Democrats than Republicans.
Terry,
totally unsampled.
Terry, even Fox News came out with a poll this week. Now, they're not oversampling Democrats. Every single poll of swing states in the last week, including Fox News, has shown we're up 7 in Ohio, Obama's up 7 in Virginia, up 5 in Florida, up 8 in Michigan, up 14 in Wisconsin. I mean, Terry, this is slipping away from you guys unless Romney does something very different.
Dale, is there a concern or is there a worry that Democrats could become overconfident? Here we are, only the 21st, 23rd of September, and the debates haven't even hit yet.
Only a fool would say that the race is over 46 days out. But here's what I will tell you. The one avenue Romney has to win the presidency is the economy. He has to convince voters that Obama has not cleaned up the Republican mess quickly enough. But to do that, you've got to show you have new ideas for bringing the economy forward. And what is his plan? It's going back to the same old policies that got us into this mess in the first place. $5 trillion in new tax cuts for the wealthy and less regulation on Wall Street that got us into this mess.
Dale, you do a great job of repeating the Democrat talking points, but you won't talk about Obama's failure on the stimulus plan, the problems with Obamacare.
We're off the talking points. Laura, can you jump in here or give us a referee, blow a whistle?
If I had a whistle, yeah, I think I could probably, these guys move back to their corners and wait for the next bell. I think that, what were you talking about anyway? I mean,
we were talking about why Romney won't talk about his plan in any detail. It's because it's massively unpopular to talk about it in detail. That's why.
But the other thing is that politicians rarely like to talk in detail because if you come out with specifics, then you get attacked, and then you get and you get a lot more meaty stories, and it behooves them to stay at the 10,000-foot level with just the broad ideas, and that's what both sides do.
Let's just say, look, Ohio seems to be the national key here. The unemployment rate announced today, 7.2%, the same as it's been for the last 2 or 3 months. But before that, the unemployment rate had come down gradually, 11 straight months. All the polls seem to show Ohioans feel a lot better about the economy, and they seem to be liking Obama a lot more. Of course, Kasich too. They like Kasich more, but both of them.
Well, we got to move on to. Let's move on to one of these big issues we want to talk about. Before we were so rudely sidetracked by that hidden video, the campaign issue of the week here in Ohio is shaping up to be trade, outsourcing, unfair trade rules, and it started with an ad by Mitt Romney.
This is America's manufacturing when President Obama took office. This is China's. Under Obama, we've lost over 500,000 manufacturing jobs. And for the first time, China is beating us. 7 times Obama could have stopped China's cheating. 7 times, he refused.
It's time to stand up to the cheaters and make sure we protect jobs for the American people.
Barack Obama, failing to stop cheating, failing American workers.
I'm Mitt Romney, and I approve this message.
Soon after that ad hit the airwaves, President Obama was in Ohio, announcing his administration will call for the crackdown on China for subsidizing auto parts it exports. Those exports undercut U.S. exports, namely Ohio exports.
But he's been running around Ohio claiming he's going to roll up his sleeves and he's going to take the fight to China. Now, Ohio, you can't stand up to China when all you've done is sent them our jobs. You can talk a good game, but I like to walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Laura Bischoff, outsourcing jobs, fair trade, especially in Ohio with a manufacturing base, that's a touch point for a lot of voters here.
Absolutely. You know, I think that the rhetoric and the talk and the TV commercials from both sides don't really paint a full picture of what is a really complex and delicate issue of trade relations with China. You know, this is something that impacts thousands of workers, hundreds of thousands of workers, millions of consumers, the whole global economy, and it can't really be distilled into a 30-second commercial. The Chinese market is incredibly important to Ohio and to the U.S. manufacturers in general. Our exports to China went up 500% over the last decade, and we sent like $100 billion worth of goods to China last year, including I think 2.7 billion from Ohio alone. That said, the Chinese, you know, since they joined the World Trade Organization in 2001, they've been kind of eating our lunch. We've lost 1.9 million U.S. manufacturing jobs, and a lot of this, you know, some people think is because they subsidize their manufacturers, they undervalue their currency, they impose a lot of duties that are unfair. And what's interesting is that you know, both sides are saying we have to get tough on China, but they don't really talk about how if we get tough on China, it might hurt our exporting as well.
I'm going to say something that Dale might agree with. I think in some way Romney's put too much emphasis on the China trade thing, because in central Ohio, western Ohio, southwestern Ohio, we've got a lot of soybean growers, which is exported. We've got Honda, a lot of people along I-75 making parts for international companies that are in America. I'm not sure the China trade issue is quite as big as what they think, because Ohio is a state that does export a lot, and a lot of people in this state understand there's a give and take back and forth. But thank heavens for Obama, 3.5 years in as president, he finally decides to semi-talk tough on China.
Well, I knew there would be something at the end, Terry. So let me just say that I agree to this extent. A trade war would not be in anyone's interest, all right? That's true. But by the same token, it's not just free trade. We also have to have fair trade. And the truth is, Barack Obama has brought more trade cases before the World Trade Organization in 4 years than George W. Bush did in 8 years. He's also had success in getting them to scale back their currency manipulation by 8%, according to CNN Money Watch. Now, pair that against right here in Ohio, we have a Senate race going on, U.S. Senate race. Sherrod Brown, and these are the facts. I know it's going to sound partisan, Laura, but the fact is Sherrod Brown literally wrote the bill that would stop currency manipulation. But Josh Mandel refuses to even say whether he would vote for it if he were in the Senate today.
But Dale, Sherrod's been in Congress for 17 years. Why does he wait till this year, election year, to finally put a bill in the hopper? Why didn't he do something earlier?
He didn't. He wrote it last year. But we can't get it moved, Terry, because your party continues to obstruct. You have to have 60 votes to get anything passed in the Senate now.
Harry Reid's the Democrat leader of the Senate that Sherrod voted for.
But you block everything. That's why we need 60 votes to get anything passed. That's not the way the Senate's supposed to operate.
Bill Cohen, with all the talk of Mitt Romney's outsourcing and the jobs that were lost to manufacturing in Ohio over the past, several years, the graphic showing the loss of manufacturing jobs, who wins this debate, do you think? Who has the advantage in this debate in Ohio, Romney or Obama, or is it a draw?
I think it's a draw. But it's so easy to talk about this and say we're going to crack down. Once people become president, they see it's not so easy. So I think people are a lot more looking at things like what's the Ohio unemployment rate. I think that's what they're looking at, not a lot of the China stuff.
And as further point of this complication, China claims that the United States subsidized the auto industry with the auto bailout that the president keeps trumpeting all the time.
Well, and they're right. 70% of GM's production is done overseas, including a huge amount in China, helped by the federal government and the bailout. Now, in all honesty, and I agree with both Dale and Bill and Or it's more complicated to do because there's a huge market of 1.3 billion people and a really rising middle class. We don't want to cut those markets off.
Okay. The other big story of the week, she says she had been thinking about it for some time. She said she wants to spend more time with her husband and her grandchildren. She said she's enjoyed all of her 35 years with the Columbus City Schools, and it's time to move on. That's why Jean Harris says she is retiring at the end of the year. And she says it's not because of the dark cloud of an investigation into attendance data manipulation.
Over the next year, I will make sure the transition to new leadership goes smoothly. That means seeing the current investigation into attendance irregularities through and getting to the bottom of it. I want to address any findings from the state auditor and our own internal auditor. Back in August 2011, I started this investigation, bringing data forward to our own people and to the state. So seeing this matter to its conclusion, whatever that may be, is very important to me.
Deb Butland, she says the investigation is not the reason she's retiring, but is it a reason?
Sure. I mean, look, we'd have to be very naive to think that that her resignation had nothing to do with the allegations that have been leveled against the district. Now, whether there is anything illegal that transpired there will come out in due course as this investigation is finished. In the meantime, it's always the case that when a major problem occurs, a person at the top is always held responsible and accountable, whether or not they had any personal culpability. But what I would say is that as all the accolades have come out this week since she announced her resignation, she has done an enormous number of good things there. And I hope whatever happens with regard to this investigation, it's not going to overwhelm all the good things that Ms. Harris has done in the school district. Some
of the things, she brought the district up from an F rating, according to the state guidelines, to a C. Not great, but certainly better than F. The dropout rate's gone from 50% to 80%, give or take, and under her tenure, the district has built or renovated 39 schools.
Well, the problem, some of those so-called achievements, we don't know for certain whether they really were honestly achieved. There's going to be a lot more to come. Obviously, I predicted earlier she's going to be gone by the end of this year. And to Mike Coleman's credit, today he's kind of kicked the ball off in terms of we've got to look at some better ways to fix the Columbus schools. And it isn't just the superintendent, it's about the school board.
But speaking of lack of specifics, he just said, the only specific he said is, we're not going to take over the schools. But that was, we're going to study it.
Well, but I think Mike Coleman, much as the mayor in Chicago, the Democrat mayor in Cleveland, some other big city mayors, they've realized you can't have cities that are vibrant and healthy and attracting jobs unless you fix the schools. And there's no doubt Columbus schools spend over $16,000 per pupil plus tens of millions in capital dollars. They've got the money, they've got the resources. It's a matter, and the teachers are trying, but you've got to better reward the good teachers and help them produce better.
Talking about money, that's one thing that she got through. She got the voters to approve tax hikes, even during bad economic times. That's to her credit.
Do you think that's why she's giving her notice now? Because they're going to go on the ballot next November. That's the expectation for a levy. That the school board and she decided that, you know, we need to get as much distance between this administration and the next time we ask for a levy.
Well, she wanted to go this fall so she could pass the levy this fall, then retire. But obviously when the scandals broke, there's no way they were going to allow a ballot issue or to have a chance of ballot issue this fall.
The school board says they didn't play any role in this.
I'm sure in backdoor there was maybe some strong hints to her that it was time to go. But I think Bill's right. She's done a lot of things that other superintendents have not managed to do, like get all the tax increases and requests passed. She did increase the grading from an F to a C. Maybe some of that is in question, but there's better graduation rates. There's and she's kind of a survivor. I mean, 11 years as an urban school district. I think that's a national record, isn't it?
Longest serving, from what I understand, and also far longer tenure than her previous administrators, superintendents of the city schools here.
Well, she's definitely a survivor, but I think there's a lot more to be written because the state auditor's digging pretty deep, and I forget where the dispatch is at. Is it 2 or 3 million records changed, altered? There's a lot more in this story to come.
So what do we expect the mayor to do? Do we expect a Cleveland-style takeover? He said today, no, it's not what he's looking at.
I think they're going to come up with something that's not Cleveland, because there is this awkward thing of not all of the Columbus district, most all the Columbus district is within the city of Columbus, but the mayor of Columbus also represents parts of Columbus that are in other school districts. But the good thing is the business leadership, I think the state leadership will be behind whatever change the local community wants.
All right. Our final topic, an Ohio death row inmate says he is too obese to be executed. Ronald Post weighs at least 480 pounds. He's been on death row for 30 years since he shot and killed a hotel clerk near Cleveland. He says his weight and the difficulty of finding his veins could lead to a torturous and lingering death. Bill Cohen, he's been in prison for 30 years. Why on earth does this man weigh 480 pounds?
It's unclear because, as the Corrections Department spokeswoman told me today, we operate a heart-healthy menu, and the meals are portioned, not all you can eat. Now, of course, as we figure, the inmates may be trading food, giving him extra food, but who knows? His lawyers say he's always had a weight problem. He went in at 240, now he's twice as heavy. They insist he has not been gaining weight on purpose. They say he always had problems with this, and now that he has knee and back pain, he's in a wheelchair. He's been told he shouldn't be walking places because he could fall. And earlier, when he tried to exercise and he used the prison, exercycle, and he got on it, he broke it. So they say he's tried to lose weight. They say he went to the prison officials and said, "Can you give me some medicine? Can you give me stomach stapling?" They said no. So they're trying to put the onus on the system, not him.
So should this be a reason not to go through with the execution?
Well, I talked with a major prosecutor in Ohio this week, and he was almost laughing at the ridiculousness of some of the things that these lawyers dream up. And the second part of the question is, this guy's 30 years on death row. We've got another inmate on death row here, Alva Campbell, that escaped, executed somebody, and he'd been a previous murderer, convicted criminal. The system in some ways is out of control if you either allow fat people to get out of paying the penalty in terms of what they're sentenced.
Yeah, look, this gambit is unlikely to work. It's my understanding that a different person in another state tried the same argument a few years ago. The court rejected it, and the fellow was executed. But if I may say so, as interesting as this may be, this story largely affects one person. I think there's another story related to food that's going to affect a lot more Ohioans and Ohio consumers and Ohio farmers. In June, in a rare display of bipartisanship, the Senate passed a farm bill.
Now, how would the farm bill affect this case, though?
It's not going to affect this case, but what I'm trying to tell you is this case only affects one person.
Well,
this farm bill affects everybody in the state, Mike, and with due respect, I think it's a little more important than this.
We'll talk about that next week.
All right.
Should we have a different method of execution?
We changed. We got rid of the electric chair years ago because it was considered too gruesome, and people thought that the lethal injection at least appeared to be the most painless, the most humane. So that's why we've got what we have now. You hear some of these people say, "Well, he shot his victim. Let's shoot him in the head." In fact, shooting somebody is probably the most painless way. But, people don't want to see that kind of a gruesome thing. Even death penalty supporters don't want that because they know if we had something like a firing squad, it would backfire. And people would start to question the death penalty.
When they're unable to find a vein in this lethal injection stuff, they've had problems in the past where they're digging around in some guy who's got collapsed veins from drug abuse, or he's super obese, and that too can be pretty gruesome.
Okay, let's get to our off-the-record final parting shots, and Terry Casey, you're up first.
Well, I've got a little prop here. This is the first part of a 48-page report from the Congress, and guess what? On Sunday starts the 100-day countdown to the biggest tax increase in America. Example, the lowest tax rate, if Obama gets his way, will go from 10% up to 15%. A whole bunch of other tax cuts, tax increases, plus all the tax increases that are part of Obamacare. So America, get ready for higher taxes.
But Republicans agreed to this plan.
as a temporary plan because Obama wouldn't work out something more reasonable.
Well, he would disagree. Dale?
Yeah. So now that Governor Kasich has invoked executive privilege to avoid turning over his official schedules in a lawsuit filed by the Democratic Party, two questions will be front and center in the coming weeks. First, what is Governor Kasich trying to hide? And second, will the Columbus Dispatch editorial page display the same level of outrage that they have in the past when administrations they didn't like tried to shield public records from the public?
Bill?
Remember State Issue 2, the ballot proposal that aims to make the redrawing of legislative and congressional districts less partisan and more competitive. I want to predict that the only shot that backers have of getting this passed is coattails. If they can get President Obama to endorse it, cut a TV ad on it, and campaign on it in Ohio, and even if they get all that to happen, the strategy only works if he wins Ohio big and he has long coattails.
And Laura?
I'd like to make a plug for a story that we have been working on for almost a year. It's going to run in Sunday's paper. You can check it out on DaytonDailyNews.com. It has to do with Ohio State University's spending on Gordon Gee's travel, housing, entertainment, wining and dining, and that sort of thing. So I encourage people to visit DaytonDailyNews.com.
Interesting. In a related note, Jim Petro, the Chancellor for Higher Ed, has launched a committee to study efficiency at college campuses, but I question how a committee can be efficient when it has 44 members. Anyway, good luck to them. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. You can check out my blog, 5 Ways Mitt Romney Can Turn This Tape Around. That's at wosu.org/COTR. For our crew, for our panel, have a good week. So what?